stage shelf.
I just asked if you were heterosexual. I never killed a man. I beg your pardon? I said I've never killed a man. I didn't ask if you had. You asked why I thought I was qualified. I think that is qualification. And I'm just wondering why that in particular strikes you as an important qualification for semen donation. So that's a big fucking qualification. Excuse me, a very important qualification. No one's ever said that before. You ever asked? No. You should.
Christopher McQuarrie. Messieurs, soyez bons. Il est très timide, il n'a pas l'habitude. D'habitude, il dirige un plateau de 600 personnes, et là, tout à coup, c'est lui qui va être sous le feu des questions de Didier. And thank you again to be here. Very proud to have you here. You and the movie tonight, but especially you. You're not such a great picture. Yeah, you are.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Ça va, Christopher? Everything all right? You all right?
I think so.
All right. We're going to start with Cannes since we're here, and it's not your first movie in Cannes, Final Reckoning. You had Usual Suspects here. You had Top Gun, the writer of Top Gun, and Maverick. But it's your first movie as a director present in the official selection in Cannes. The question is pretty simple. What does that mean for you? What does the festival represent for you?
It's quite something. It's the ultimate arbiter of film as an art form. So it feels a little strange that I'm here. It's not a place I ever expected to be. I'm very flattered to be here.
Yeah, well, but you're no stranger to festival. I mean, one of the first movie you wrote, Public Access, it won in Sundance, and it's very strange, Public Access. I went back to this movie to prepare for that. There is kind of the blueprint of all your characters are already inside this story. I mean, your characters, whether it's a movie you directed or the movie you wrote, are always kind of morally ambiguous. They're not like, even in the Mission Impossible, even in The Richer, there's always something. They could go for the good, they could go for the bad, but for the right or for the wrong, but there's always something ambiguous to them. They're almost like a film noir characters. Very simply, why is that, and why does that come from?
I hear that a lot about moral ambiguity, and I've always felt that my characters are fairly certain where they stand morally, whether that is moral or amoral. I think the ambiguity comes from the fact that I don't really delve into backstory very much. I tend to meet characters in real time, and you discover them as you go. And so I think possibly motives are ambiguous. And I think for the film noir of it all, I'm often asked what my first experience was. When did I know I wanted to be a filmmaker, or what was the first film I saw? I have no memory of my first film or the first story I told, the first story I wrote. I have told stories and loved stories for as long as I can remember. And my memories of film tend to be, if I think about it, quite noirish. Whether they are actual film noirs, a lot of the films of the 40s and the 50s, which is what I grew up watching. Most of my generation grew up watching films of the 70s, and I was watching much older films. And I think that might be where some of the noirish sensibility comes from. I was so unaware of it that I remember shortly after we finished shooting Usual Suspects, I went to the theater to see Romeo is Bleeding with a friend of mine who was a filmmaker. And we loved the film, and when we walked out, I said to him, you know, one of these days I really want to make a film noir. And he said, you realize you just did. It had never occurred to me until that moment. I don't really think of it in those terms. I think it's just something in my blood.
I love what Thierry just said, that in the 60s there was an old generation of film critique that became filmmaker afterwards, that discovered the authors into the Hollywood machine, if you want. And he's right, you're part of this category, but I think more of the reference you would have, and as you said before, 70s, 80s movie. I would go for you as a filmmaker like Don Siegel or those kind of filmmakers, the one that made like very raw action movies in the 70s and in the 80s. Am I correct with that? Is it some kind of the movie you want, Dirty Harry's and this kind of stuff?
Some kind of movie that
The movie by Don Siegel and the movie by like...
oh yes, I mean I grew up on those films and on a steady diet of them. In fact, my cousin with whom I spent a lot of my summers was obsessed with Clint Eastwood films. And so whenever I was staying at their house, it was a steady diet of the work of Clint Eastwood.
Let's go directly to Usual Suspect. You won an Oscar with this script. It changed a lot of things in the genre at the time, and it still has an effect today. Its twist is unforgettable, its villain is totally unforgettable. You all remember Kaiser Soze, do you? Everybody knows this film, everybody has a memory of this film. How do you explain that it became such a classic?
I think probably because its ending is both a dark ending but an oddly triumphant one. It's really a lesson in point of view. The fact that that character is who he is and has done what he has done. In that world, in the moral universe of that world, he wins in the end of the film, and because we're in his POV, and don't even realize we're in his POV for most of the film, we win with him. So it's an oddly, it's a double-edged sword of an ending. I think it oddly leaves people feeling good, I think.
Do you think we can still write a movie like Usual Suspects today?
Well, I don't know whether or not we can. I can say that film enjoyed some of the success that it did because it was moderately successful in theaters, but it really came and went. It was only in the theaters for a few weeks. It made back its money, and then they quickly pulled it. And it more or less disappeared, and it was only as it was circulating on home video around the industry that it snuck up on people by the time the Academy Awards came. And as a result, people were handing the movie to one another and saying, just watch this, and not telling them about it. The ad campaign was not very successful. Awareness of the film was not all that huge. And I think people got to discover that movie. It snuck up on them, and I think it would be very hard in the age of the internet and that sort of meta-awareness of film to get a twist by people. I don't think The Crying Game would be probably the surprise that it was either.
That's the thing, I mean, it was also another time. It was a time where mid-sized independent movie had their place in theaters. I mean, we could see a movie like Usual Suspect or The Crying Game, as you said, in a multiplex in every city in the US and every city in the world. It's not the case anymore. It's not really the case anymore. I mean, they still exist, but they're mostly on streamers, and they mostly get released like this. So how would we discover now the McQuarries of tomorrow? How would a young filmmaker, a young screenwriter can start an ambitious project and kind of the career that you have now, Monsieur?
Well, my journey is fairly uncommon. If you look at filmmakers from a much different generation, filmmakers like Billy Wilder and David Lean, William Wyler, those filmmakers all began in some smaller position on set. I don't mean to say smaller, that's not the right way to say it. They began in the crew. David Lean began as an assistant editor. And they farmed their way up. Now what happens is if you have a young filmmaker who makes a small film, say $5 million film that makes $50 million, the industry grabs that person and assumes, well, if we give that person $200 million, they'll make $1 billion. And they're not educated as to the kind of movie that they're making. And it can very often lead to their destruction. They're not given any support, they're not given any sort of mechanism, and they're set up to fail. Whereas my situation with my first film did not perform very well. And I was relegated back to the minor leagues. And I had to work my way back up. And also on this journey, if you look at this reel, the chronology of that reel, I worked as a director and then had no problem going back to work as a writer or a co-writer or a co-co-co-writer on any number of films in any genre. I had no particular judgment about the material I was working on. If somebody asked me for help, I would come in and help. That gave me a great deal of experience, more objective. I learned more as a producer on Valkyrie, watching another director and serving another director, and in times being the co-pilot for that director, than I ever did directing my own movie. You're so busy directing your own film. I've often likened, I'm asked, what's the difference between writing and directing? And writing is pushing a boulder up a mountain, and directing is running down the mountain with the boulder rolling after you. You don't really have time to assess what it is until it's over. And the bigger the movie, the bigger the boulder, the faster you're running. And a Mission Impossible turns into an avalanche, and you really don't have time to take in what you've done until it's over. So a lot of filmmakers now, because the ambition is such to get in the director chair and tell the story you're trying to tell. The truth of the matter is, I've never made any of the movies I set out to make. The drawer I have filled with those dream projects is still there. My first film was not a film I wanted to make, it was the film they would let me make. And that was the way they got.
We'll come back on that world again in a minute, but what's your take on the mid-size mid-size movie crisis? Well, mostly in the US, because here in France they're getting released on the big screen, and we're lucky here. But in the US, they mostly go to the streamers. So what's your take on this crisis?
It's really one of the advantage filmmakers decide to make of it. The upside to streaming, and I'm not sitting here to advocate for that because I'm a die-hard believer in the big screen experience, and I believe that what makes film special is that however many hundreds of strangers have all come together to sit in a room and watch something together and experience something together. Streaming is in danger of driving that into extinction. It's a very real thing that we contemplate often and talk about quite a lot. The advantage to it is that a filmmaker entering that world does not have the pressure of the opening weekend. They don't have the same kind of competition, and they are allowed to experiment and they are allowed to fail. And failure is an essential part of success. It's the most important part of the filmmaking journey. That's not what you feel when you're failing, but when you look back on it, I realize those are the only times I really learned. I think that's the advantage of that, so long as you don't become comfortable and complacent in that. Because I think one of the things that makes film what it is, and that forces film to have to strive harder, is that opening weekend? Is that how long can I stay in theaters? How many people can I bring to my experience? That keeps you honest, and it keeps you in a place where you're no longer complacent. The truth is, and I think if Tom were sitting here, he would agree with me, what I see a lot of filmmakers do, and a lot of the filmmakers, those young filmmakers we talk about who are given that huge opportunity, they reach a place where they believe, now I can do whatever I want. They're all striving for a place where they have total creative freedom. And show me a filmmaker that has total creative freedom, and I'll show you a filmmaker who's making a film for a very limited group of people, very often one. The effort is to find a way for me, is to find a way to say, I mean, I'm asked all the time, what is cinema? How do I define cinema? First and foremost, this is a cinema. It's a place where people come to watch movies, which some people in the industry view as an anachronism, and I don't. And I see the state of cinema more and more over the 30 years I've been doing it. A wedge has been driven through the center of it, very different from the films I grew up watching, where you are expected, tacitly or not, to choose the kind of filmmaker you're going to be. Are you going to be an artist, or are you going to be an entertainer? And artists are looked at through a certain prism as are entertainers. What I do, what Tom strives to do, is find the ultimate challenge for us, and what defines cinema for me is one that merges the two. How do I enrich and engage? My message is not worth telling if only 100 people come to see it. And so it's finding that balance, and what you see in these movies and in Mission Impossible, those are opportunities I was handed. I'm still very much the filmmaker who quite defiantly made the way of the gun. I'm trying to find through that vessel a way to say things, a way to imbue meaning and to make commentary. And the movie is constantly fighting those things back. That is the struggle, and that's where I choose to exist.
That's the thing. I want to come back a little bit on this. I mean, on my opinion, since COVID, there is two movies that kind of saved the theaters in America. The first one is Top Gun Maverick, and everybody's saying that it's totally true. And the second one was Noir. It's very strange what I want to say, but Sean Baker, who won the Palme d'Or last year here, he fought like crazy to keep his movie in a theater. It's a small movie, and Neon, the distributor, helped him to keep this movie in the theater for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he ended up making $75 million in the box office. Is it important to have the two poles of Hollywood, of American cinema, fighting for the theaters? Is it important that people like you and Tom Cruise are fighting, and on the other side, independent filmmakers are still fighting for that?
It's vital. It's essential. The problem, one of the problems with contemporary cinema, particularly Hollywood, is, again, over the course of my career, I've watched it develop into a competition. It has become about who crushes whom and for how much. We should not be competing with one another. We should all be serving one another. We should be working for this. We should be working to serve the mechanism. And if everybody is doing that, if you are working to do that and to serve that, I look at things in terms of deposits and withdrawals. Top Gun Maverick is a deposit. That is something where we are doing what we can to bring as many people into the theater and to keep that mechanism thriving, so that a film like an Noir can come and be in theaters and take the time to grow. That's what we want to see happen. So it's absolutely vital, and we shouldn't be working to crush one another. We should be working all together to serve one another. That's why you see Tom going out and promoting movies that other people would regard as his competition. We are not competing with anyone. Tom Cruise is competing with no one but himself. He understands, and together we understand that nobody wins unless everybody wins. And what I worry about with that wedge that's being driven, even on larger movies, very, very big Hollywood tentpole movies, they're coalescing a very large audience, but it is a very isolated audience. It's a particular fan base to that particular brand that is not enriching the audience in their understanding of cinema. It's actually cutting the audience off from the history of cinema. When you look at streamers, and I don't begrudge them at all, I would appreciate if the homepage, when you turned on Netflix, didn't just shove their material at you, but also put classic cinema to you and encouraged you, which you have to dig down into. And so the number of people I meet who have never heard of The Best Years of Our Lives, who have never heard of William Wyler's The Big Country, who have never seen Cool Hand Luke, and that their history of cinema begins at Star Wars, or begins at Pirates of the Caribbean. Film I love, by the way. I adore that film. I worry for the fate and the history of cinema. So to me, it sounds a little hollow when there is a claim that they are saving cinema, when in reality, intentionally or not, it's being buried under sedimentary layer of contemporary content. If you want to save cinema, if you don't care about the physical noun that is cinema, but if you want to save the concept of cinema, promote it, resurrect it, there are great films there that deserve to be seen by this generation.
I guess we all agree on that. Let's talk about Way of the Gun. And as you said before, it wasn't your project originally, was it?
I beg your pardon?
Way of the Gun, it was proposed to you.
Yes.
Let's talk about it. And it's something that is very strange is that there is also all your cinema as a filmmaker inside it. It's I remember the scene when there is a gunshot in the street, but we don't see the gunshot. We stay inside the building. I think it's Juliette Lewis, and we stay with her. We hear the sound, and the car chase is not really the usual car chase that we see. You bring the step on the side to your style of filmmaking, starting with these movies. Did you realize that at the time? Where was it coming from?
Well, when I made that film, how that film came to be, I was trying to make anything but that film, as was Benicio del Toro. We were both, post the success of Usual Suspects, we were floundering. We couldn't find work. We were struggling. And I had found myself going to studio after studio and pitching the films I wanted to make, which were far more ambitious than anything I was probably qualified to make. And upon reflection, I thank God at the time I did. Knowing what I know now, I'm glad I didn't get to make those movies then. They would have been catastrophes, and much more expensive catastrophes. But they kept coming back to crime films because I was the Usual Suspects guy. And I kept saying, I don't want to make a crime film. That's just a thing I did. That's not who I am. And it was Benicio. We were sitting having coffee one day, lamenting our unemployment. And he said, it seems to me that if you want to say something, that's the only way they'll let you say it. And so we, over a series of lunches, including one with my wife, who told us the story of an executive in Hollywood who had hired a surrogate mother for his wife who wanted to preserve her figure, and that there were bodyguards guarding the surrogate mother 24 hours a day. And we thought, that's who they should kidnap. That's how the story came to be. And but I still could not put away my emotional frustration. And what you feel in that movie is my attacking the genre that I'm being forced to make. The genre had become, at that time, very hip, very glib, and it was celebrating violence. And I said, if you're going to make me make a crime film, I'm going to make a film about criminals. And if there's going to be violence, you're going to pay. Unfortunately, the audience didn't love that, so they reacted in kind. I made a film that was very deliberately forcing the audience to concentrate on the movie, and they rejected it. It was a very valuable lesson. I learned more from the failure of that film than the success of any of the films I've made since.
You said before you had to go back to the film didn't work so well, so you had to go back to writing. But in 2008, you write Valkyrie, and you meet this guy, Tom Cruise, something like that. And since then, 11 movies together.
11 movies, yes.
Why does it click so well with Tom?
There's a very long answer. The short answer is a love of cinema. A common love of cinema, which I did not expect. When I sat down to meet Tom, I was quitting the movie business. And I met him strictly out of curiosity. I was truly on my way out the door. I thought it would be interesting to meet him. And I was very surprised when I sat down and met Tom Cruise, that Tom Cruise, who I knew from his movies and his publicity, I had a very different picture of who Tom Cruise was. We loved the same movies, grew up on the same movies, grew up in under very similar circumstances. And so I think what made the two of us as compatible as we were, one, our love of cinema, and two, what I know from working with him for so long. Tom is always a student. He is, as long as he's been in the film business, he's very eager to learn from the people around him. He's very generous that way. When you're making a Tom Cruise movie, it's not Tom Cruise saying, no, here's how you do it. It's Tom Cruise empowering you and saying, what do you want to do? That spotlight, the first time it's turned on you, is incredibly intense and incredibly clarifying, and you learn to swim very quickly or you sink.
Well, if only we had the other side of the story. If only, oh well. Mesdames et messieurs, je crois qu'on a, qui arrive sur scène maintenant, Tom Cruise.
Merci. Hey, gang. I got a family and friends here.
Please.
Merci. It's so beautiful to be here.
Amazing.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I love coming to Cannes. The history here is extraordinary, and cinema lovers and story lovers, and we all share that passion. So thank you all for being here. It's a real honor for me.
And I think Cannes loves you too, monsieur. Tom, is everything that Monsieur McQuarrie said true?
Beg your pardon?
Is everything that McHugh said true about you guys clicking together?
Yeah, I mean, listen, and more. I mean, I've studied his career before we met. I read his scripts, and I think that the thing that we always talk about when I read his scripts, you can hear it, you can see it, and I felt the filmmaker's mind, the story, the craftsmanship of his work, where he's writing it editorially. You know, one of the things, you can see it. And the things that we would do when we were making movies is I'm constantly reading through the scripts, constantly reviewing the story. And we had a thing where we'd shoot, and then on the weekend we'd always read it. And I would have him read these editorial structures, because then it informs how to shoot it. You feel the tone of the story. He loves movies, and it's just a constant story. And also we love it, so we're very supportive of a wide range of cinema also that look, it's just very simple. It's not complicated. We love movies. We love telling stories. I don't know what to say. We love seeing good movies. We love talking about movies with filmmakers, with people. It's a passion, and it's as simple as that.
I remember talking to you, Tom, like 2 years ago for Top Gun, and
Thank you for that.
we talked about all the directors you worked with. When we talked about Chris, it was a blink in your eyes, like it's more than my friend. I don't know your personal relationship, but it's something different. But Tom, Chris, does that make something different because of that, because of your relationship you have with Tom when you're writing for him, when you write for one of his movies? Is there a difference for you?
Can I just say one thing? He doesn't just write for me, he's able to come in and write for the actor. So the way movies used to be made is you'd have the actors, and then you're building, the craftsmen around the artist and the story. You don't just write something and then cast the person, you're writing for that person. And the way that I learned cinema is you're developing a character within the story. You start adapting and changing the character. As the actor starts coming in and the story starts to evolve, you find the voices, and it's this wonderful culmination of that. He instantly knows. He'll talk to the actor, and then he'll just start writing the voice of that actor, and you see how it's wonderful. And that's movies. That's you know, if you look at all the way back, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, many different filmmakers, they would develop the stories and for their own voice and for the voice of the other actors. So sorry, I answered your question.
You did.
But anyway, let me just say
But when you ask what the difference is, it's that. There isn't another mechanism that gives you the freedom to do that. Our process can be and has been interpreted as something that we're making up as we go along. That's not the case. It's very meticulously worked out. The material assets of the film are figured out long in advance. What isn't in stone is the heart of the story, which is character. And until we cast the actor, they're merely a vessel. That role is merely a vessel. When you watch the latest Mission Impossible, when you see Tramell Tillman, when you see Hannah Waddingham, Haley Atwell, every single role that's in the movie is imbued with the spirit of that actor. We are literally just hiring talented people and getting out of their way.
and that's how I learned how to make movies.
Which is why it's different making a Tom Cruise.
Yeah, right from the beginning, when I did Taps, I was given the freedom to be able to create the character. And I didn't know any other way. So every film that I've made, it's been that way, where I didn't ask to be invited. You just were together, creating.
It's also how the films of Irving Thalberg were made, and how the old films of old Hollywood were made. When it wasn't working, you changed it. You changed the way the character was dressed and the way the character was lit.
And it's like, it's shining a light on the artist, whether it's an actor, a cinematographer, and anyone, any of their abilities, that it's having that ability to be able to see that light and just serve it up in a way that now everyone rises, and it's a story that an audience is being taken through it from character to character, environment to environment, culture to culture within the film. That is the important thing. It's not trying to jam someone into it. It's like you just see where that actor is flourishing, and you just fan that fire, and then now you have all of us together. That's the beauty of it. I mean, I love being on a set, and I'm there with the actors off camera. I do my own inserts with my hands.
He does all his own off camera. Anytime you see a hand or a foot on a foot pedal, that's Tom Cruise.
I know,
Yes.
I know.
Anyone could wear the shoe, no one would know. But there is performance in it, there is intention in it. And having tried to do it without Tom, I can tell you, it gets done a lot faster when it's Tom's shoe.
You even hire a stand-in or no need?
No, I really like doing it myself. I like being on set. I like being part of the lighting. There's a lot of times that we're going through, you know, we go in early and we're exploring and discovering the set, and just want to make sure, is there any opportunity? We're looking for lightning in a bottle, not just from myself, but from our entire crew and our cast. They all know, like, anyone has an idea, wants to try something, where we want to create that time and space. That's why I do a lot of rehearsal. There's a lot of preparation. But it's always, it's not just learning the lines and doing it. It's you're discovering the tone and constantly chasing it, fanning it, pushing it, and making it, wanting it to come to life.
Well, let's talk a little bit about directing, if you don't mind, and mise en scène. What I like about your work, Monsieur McQuarrie, c'est que it's at whatever the size of the action scene is, you have a geography of action that is totally amazing. I mean, there's not a lot of directors who has that. I'm thinking of Ridley Scott, maybe Steven Spielberg has that too. This is something we are never lost. We know exactly what's happening. We know which character is where, what will, and it's very difficult in a Mission Impossible. There is like, I think in the last one there is like a parallel action with 3 different scenes at the same time. We never lost. So very simple for you, Chris. How to do that, and for you, Tom, what does that change for the actor?
Well, clarity and geography are our mantra, essentially, when we're talking about action.
It's not obvious.
And it is, to me, clarity and geography are the essence of action, before suspense, before anything. There's a gunfight in Mission Impossible Fallout, an action sequence in the middle of the movie, and we had very little time to shoot it. We were really pressed for time, and the location was only available to us for a certain amount of time. And I decided to give myself a treat, and I was just going to do the shaky handheld cam and shoot an incomprehensible action sequence. I tried to do it. It's an art form, I can't do it. The people who can make it work, my hat is off to them. As soon as I tried to do that, I was lost. I realized that what I was doing was not communicating anything except a kind of energy, which is great for certain sequences. But that comes at the expense of character. And clarity and geography are there specifically to serve character and to keep you connected to the character. Action to us is only spectacle without character.
Yeah, because we want that. When you're looking at a mission movie, and it's also something, the amount of endurance it takes, and
specifically your endurance.
yeah, and yours, the detail. When you see McHugh, he has an elegance, and even you look at Reacher, the inserts of the gear shift, the close-ups. It has real style, cool, and it's telling that story. The detail of Mission Impossible, the amount of, you have to understand it, you have to understand how to put these pieces together. You can't shoot things just kind of in one go. The detail of it, it's the discipline to be able to, and the precision to act in these movies. We take the actors on and we educate them on this kind of genre, and specifically this kind of detailed storytelling, because it's moments and moments and moments. So you have to be able to keep it alive every time, keep it fresh, keep it rehearsed, so that you're getting that behavior and those close-ups or that movement, or we're discovering some of that. That goes back to silent movies. When you're looking at this film, you're gonna feel how the close-ups are used with the characters. When Palm character is introduced and Tarzan's character, Simon, it's, we're looking at silent movies, and how do you tell these stories in a way that we're introducing character and very quickly, creating an affinity for the audience. Now, I could do a long talk about the difference between being a protagonist and a leading protagonist, a leading man in a film versus a supporting character. And I really did a lot of analysis. I've done it both. I've been, from, Color of Money with Paul Newman, or even Taps in the beginning, versus being a leading man in a risky business, and that kind of telling the responsibility that you have for the narrative versus playing another kind of character like Magnolia or Les Grossman. And understanding the different kinds of responsibilities I have, the freedoms within that, but understanding also the barriers of being able to tell a story like that. And the things that we talk about and that I was able to learn from very early on, and also studying movies, was you look at the discipline that those actors had in understanding their art form, the camera, the lens, the lighting, the story structure, and the actors that I got to work with, how they understood that lens. So when you're looking at a Mission Impossible, and what he is capable and able to do and disciplined to do is understanding every single piece. And the actors to you have to get those behaviors, and you have to have the willingness to discover it. You can't say, I want this look ahead of time. We'll be working, and more times than not, I let the actors, we're shooting them first as we're going along. And McHugh and I look at it, you're looking at the performance, and then you're gonna build the scene around that. So when you're looking at it, it is a Swiss watch of keeping the audience's attention, investment in the characters, investment in the stories.
I want to continue on that. I mean, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil the movie. People will see it tonight. But in a Final Reckoning, there is an unbelievable scene of the one with the submarine that I really don't know how you do it. But it's probably one of the biggest scenes I've ever seen on screen. But you never forget to put Tom at the center of the screen. I mean, literally, I think it's through one shot out of three that he is recentered, that the character is centered, that we must not forget that Ethan Hurt is risking his life. How do you get that? I mean, is it written, or is it during the editing process? Is it something that is always on your mind, and on your mind too, Tom?
You ask an excellent question, and the answer is yes and no to all of the above.
I'm gonna need a little more.
With what you will see tonight, with the aerial sequence, with the underwater sequence, what we have learned from the helicopter sequence in Fallout, from sequences in Top Gun Maverick, going all the way back to Edge of Tomorrow, the exosuits in Edge of Tomorrow. When you design something that ambitious, you come up with a plan, you prepare meticulously, you pat yourself on the back, and then physics hits you square in the face. And we had learned enough. Everything that you're seeing that Tom and I do is taking everything we learned from the last film and applying it to this one. And at the end of every film, between the last note of music and the credits rolling, Tom will lean over to me at the first premiere and say, "We can do better." And only in one instance, in the instance of Dead Reckoning, we were halfway through Final Reckoning, he leaned over to say it, and I went, "We already did." The submarine is its own ecosystem. The minute you're talking about, and you won't see it in the film, remember that when you're watching Tom inside this semi-submerged, rotating room inside of a submarine, that is housed inside a 60-foot diameter, 1,000-ton, 360-degree rotating, fully submersible steel gimbal in an 8.5 million liter tank. And he's inside it. And what you're watching is us testing it. Because there is no way to test that thing. There's no model, we built a model, and we put a little plastic figure and a bunch of torpedoes in it, and rotated it once, and they smashed the little plastic figure.
You know what? Oh, okay. That's terrible.
Let's talk about safety cables.
Yes.
We knew, however, that we kept telling everyone around us, they kept saying, well, they kept looking at, we pre-visualized the sequence in a lot of detail, and we kept having to remind people, this is an idea.
See, that's a cartoon.
This is a cartoon. This is not what will happen. Be ready for anything. And when you watch Fellini's 8.5, and not to compare myself to him in any way, shape, or form, but when you watch Marcello Mastroianni coming to set every day and watching the rocket ship be built, that gimbal was being built behind my trailer. Over 2.5 years while we were making Dead Reckoning, while we were trying to figure out the train sequence in that movie, knowing full well that we did not know what would happen when we turned that thing on. So everything that you're watching on screen, we didn't give ourselves more time. When the gimbal was ready, we went in with nothing inside it except the one set. We rotated it one time. We're shocked to discover nothing we thought about physically had been anticipated, and then said, what do we do with this environment? That's the sequence you're going to watch tonight with Tom Cruise at the center of it.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, and you have to act in it.
Yeah, and you know, but that's movies too. As we're looking at things in the origin of cinema, it was, here's the physics, what can we do, what story can we tell, how can we invest an audience in this, and where do we put the camera, and what's going to be the most entertaining. We try to anticipate what things are. It's not like we haven't done, I've been doing underwater sequences since Legend, and then we just keep going and going and going and pushing and trying to improve in every area as best we can. And the next films we'll do, we're going to learn from this and apply it to the next and the next and the next.
There's another particular challenge in shooting these sequences. That were I shooting a sequence like this with anyone other than Tom Cruise, well, first of all, I probably wouldn't have the resources to shoot the sequences. Second, my job would be to hide the fact that it's not the actor doing those things. I would be doing everything I could to shoot around a stuntman. I'd have some face replacement, and I might put the real actor in 1 or 2 shots to connect you to that character. The challenge of shooting a sequence with Tom is constantly reminding them that it is the actor doing it. That determines every camera position, every camera rig, and the camera positions and the camera rigs, both in the submarine. Just keep in mind, when you set a camera, then you turn the set on and the set is rotating. The camera won't be where you put it when Tom gets there. It was a very talented group of people who had to anticipate where to put the camera so that it was always collecting Tom. That in and of itself is a level of engineering that you can't imagine. Now put it on the wing of a biplane. Now put Tom on the wing of the biplane with that camera in between the wings of the biplane. Now when we started designing this sequence, we went to wing walkers who do this professionally. And they said, what do you want to do? And Tom said, I want to be 0G in between the wings of the plane. And these people who do this for a living and are part of a decades-long tradition said, no, you're not going to do that. And Tom said, thank you for your time. And we went on to some other people. And you'll see what the wing walkers said we couldn't do. But also, it's finding the camera positions and all of the engineering. It represents the work of thousands of hours of work of many people, craftsmen, pilots, engineers.
And decades of work to be able to develop these things, which is studying these aerial sequences. You know, I fly jets, I fly aerobatic airplanes, helicopters, and then how do we apply and understanding those physics when we're pulling this in or parachuting and kind of saying, okay, I understand enough about this. I really do believe we can do it.
Almost enough.
Yes, but we discover.
Yes.
We discover as go on, but it is years of development, and it's just also decades of just learning and applying and be willing to discover and find out ultimately what you have a plan, and then when the plan changes, we look at it not as a disruption, but as an opportunity. You always have to look at things as filmmakers and go, okay, this was supposed to be a sunny day, it's raining, what do we do? Or the camera's broken, we can't get that shot, let's create something more interesting. And look at that as an opportunity and not like all my ideas are shattered. And you know, he was talking about Edge of Tomorrow, we have the heavy suit. It was never supposed to be like that, but then I worked with the suit and say, okay, what is the design of this? What can we do with motion? How can we move these things with story and character and make it story and character, make it something that works for it? And more times than not, the stories that we hear in movies are things that have gone wrong or our favorite moments or things that we've discovered. And as opposed to looking at it and going on those moments going, there's a problem, we just go, no, let's look at this as an opportunity and let's embrace it together. So that's really what you have to do when you're making movies, telling stories.
And most critically, none of that amounts to anything without emotion, which has become something over the course of the 4 missions that we've done together. A more and more important part of the story and the storytelling is bringing in more and more emotional arcs and more emotional life to those characters. And that's why these movies have expanded, not so much because the action sequences have gotten bigger, but the tapestry of those characters has expanded.
Well, there's another thing that's becoming bigger and bigger is the stunts. I mean, they are from movies to movies crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier. And Chris, has it ever happened to you that Tom comes to you and say, I want to do these stunts and I want to do this, and you would say to him, are you out of your mind? Did that ever happen?
The craziest stunt in this movie, and there are many, and when you see it tonight, you'll know exactly the stunt that I'm talking about. It's Tom's towards the very, very end of the film, was the result of my foolishly showing Tom a TikTok video, thinking he'd simply be amused by it. And he said, I could do that. And I said, no, you can't. And he said, yes. And then we went about developing the process to do it. I'm often asked, does Tom suggest something that I say no? No. Do I regret suggesting many things to Tom? Yes. In the midst of those sequences, when he's on the wing of the plane, the fun of our back and forth is we start all of these movies with each asking the other, what do you want to do with this one? And I knew I had a submarine sequence because of where the last movie left off. and Tom wanted to do a wing walking sequence. And it's in the midst of those sequences when you're being utterly crushed by your ambitions that the one whose idea it wasn't would turn to the one whose idea it was and say, you wanted this. This was your idea.
You wanted this. It's crushing me.
Yes, yes. Our ideas come back to teach us a lesson or two.
Last time we spoke about stunts, you said that fear was an important part for you because it keeps you awake and makes you want to be as ready as possible for a stunt. But the question for both of you, the fear must be here first for your life because it's risky for the health of your actor and all the other stuntmen. How does that help, or how does that kind of put a brake on your ambition? The fear itself, the fear, the danger that you could have in making a scene as crazy as a biplane in this one.
For him or me? Oh. I mean, here's the thing. In life, I've always felt, I don't mind kind of encountering the unknown, and I like the feeling. It's just an emotion for me, and it's something that is not paralyzing. It doesn't bother me. I enjoy it. Any endeavor in life, people can be afraid to do something, and I'm like, okay, I don't mind kind of confronting it and going in and having, doing that. I wanted an interesting life that's very dynamic and learn things. I'm always learning something. Before you know it, the unknown, people can be quite frightened about an unknown, and I never have been. I'm curious about the unknown, or what people perceive to be unknown. I want to know. So that's how I feel about a stunt or life or entering into a movie. People can be paralyzed by making decisions, and I'm someone who's always, since I was a little kid, I make a decision and I go and I do things, approach it methodically, but I want to know and I want to experience, and that's in making movies, that's producing movies. There's all kinds of reasons why not to do something in life, and people can come up with a million evaluations and invalidations, and I tell every single person, it's better to have done it and tried than never to just sit here and wish you had or thought about it. So when you're making movies, when you're out there creating, you all just keep creating. Like, don't ask permission to do it, just do it. So don't wait till everything's perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. Movies aren't perfect, people aren't perfect, life isn't perfect, but you want to go at it, and it's better to do it. And better to do it and go, oh, I made mistakes, and then learn from those mistakes and go out and do it again, and do it again and again and again. And I can't tell you how important that is, and the things that we talk about, that I talk about with my crew, with artists. It's better to do it than not, and just keep creating. So how do I feel about fear? I'm like, oh, that's exciting. Get the adrenaline going. I don't, I try to be as, know before I go as much as I can. I'll write a goal, and then I'll write a list down of what it takes to attain that goal, and then you kind of learn, and you go up and down that list of, I got to learn how to fly a helicopter, I better learn this lens, or I better understand that culture better, or that geography, and then you just keep attacking it. And so that's what I do. That's also something that I admire about him. He's someone who is constantly learning, constantly pushing himself, and that's really the way I do it, and I wish that for everyone. And don't be afraid. Or people say, oh, you shouldn't do that, you should be careful. I'm like, actually be competent, be capable, strive towards being capable in things, and look for knowledge that you can apply. That is actually, and when you apply it, does it get you the results that you want? And I mean that in every field, whether it's understanding a lens, a camera, the tools of your craft in cinema. And it's a constant study. It's not like we've arrived and I know this lens. It's like, okay, there's a new story. How do we tell that story? What information, and is it, there's just constant learning. So that's how I feel about it.
I probably wasn't able to articulate it until this film, particularly making the aerial sequence, which was early on in production. Our safety procedures involved a briefing every morning, and we would go through all of the things we were going to do on a specific flight. You'll see with this This aerial sequence, we flew over 4,000 sorties. That's 4,000 separate flights. And what I realized very early on, I learned from the pilots that accidents happen because of an accumulation of distractions. Multiple people are distracted, often by things in their personal life or problems they're having at work. And what I realized as I started to look at it the way pilots look at it, that I had to be, in an overview, even more clear-headed than that. And I simply could not allow fear, stress, anxiety, pressure to enter into it. It did not matter how much time there was in the day. It did not matter what was going wrong. It did not matter what the schedule was, or that we weren't going to make our day. Fear is a wasted emotion. Stress is a wasted emotion. Anger is a wasted emotion. And in situations like this, they can get somebody killed. So it was simply a luxury you didn't have. After you've done it, and you go home, you can be all stressed out all you want. And what happens is, Tom and I are very often sitting in the editing room, watching what it is we've done and said, somebody should have stopped this thing. This was, look, did they actually let us do this? And then we become numb to it. So we were watching the submarine and thinking, we didn't get it. We really didn't, it just wasn't working for us. And then people would come in and sit there watching it with fresh eyes, and we saw people holding their chests, and people had to stand up and leave the room, and we thought, well,
Well, I got that guy.
did something right. Yeah. You tend to, that is the price of it is, those are the sequences that are, Tom puts it a very good way. You have, as a filmmaker, you have to be the audience. You have to be able to put yourself in the audience's position. I know no actor on earth who is better at being the audience while performing and able to both be totally present in that three-dimensional space with another actor and at the same time be looking at the scene. And I'll often tell him, hey, do you want to watch that one on playback? And he's like, I did it, I was there. He doesn't need to see it. He's also so acutely aware of the frame. It doesn't matter where he is on set. If you're looking at him on the monitor here and you ask him, where's the bottom of the frame? He looks at the focal length of the lens, and on the monitor, he goes like this, right along the bottom of the monitor. He's so connected and so acutely aware and so experienced and in tune with that, that it's a genuine luxury. You have somebody who is representing the audience there on set with you. It's beyond value. Thank you. That's very true.
I've seen the movies this weekend, and I was like, of course, I was on the edge of my seat, like everybody will be tonight. But there was also like,
You all coming tonight? Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, that's cool. That's nice. Good. We're gonna have fun tonight. I can't wait.
But there's something else. I mean, I realized also, I'm watching a lot of movies, but Mission Impossible is 30 years of my life, 30 years of your life, 20 years of yours. So I wonder why all these themes that we find in the film. The film talks about that. The film talks about time passing. The film talks about the consequences of stuff we made 30 years ago. Of course, it's an action movie. Of course, it's Mission Impossible. But it's also the meaning of it. And it talks also about the fact that we have to keep the fight, to keep fighting the machine, as Ethan Hunt is doing literally in this one. And it's kind of a sum up of 30 years of our lives. Do you realize that? Was it something that you were thinking about, probably not doing it because you were kind of very busy, but writing it and working on it? Is it? What's your take on this, the feelings that we have as audience member, if you're as old as me, and these movies are part of our life.
Is that for me? Oh.
For you both.
No, listen, it is that journey, and it is that journey, and our lives are the sum of our choices, and these are things that we talk about, and I think that, McHugh was working with him, he's got a perspective on the franchise that was very unique in the story that he wanted to tell. I was like, this is very unique, and his ability to be able to pull those moments out and create this kind of emotional story. I don't know, you know, it was just, I was really excited, and his ideas were extraordinary. And yeah, it's 30 years. First film I ever produced officially, and it means a lot to me. It means a lot to me in so many ways. The journey that we've taken, what I've learned about life in doing it, and my ambitions, just even as a kid, to be able to travel to different cultures and work within those cultures and look at those spaces and places and people, and not just visit them, but, you know, sweat together as we're creating. You really get to know someone when you're working with them. You really get to understand what we have in common and the human experience, and all those things. You know, my whole life has interested me above all, and being able to tell these stories. So it's, you know, means a lot. It means a lot to me. And yeah, it's just even thinking that I'm here being able to do this at this time. That was a dream. It's not something that was planned. I hoped, I wanted that. Like, I was a kid thinking into the future. I'm someone who always kind of looks at things, if I'm making a movie or doing it, we think about, my gosh, what would it be like to be a Cannes? Or what would it be like, you know, to have that moment, or decades from now? As we're making it, are the people is it gonna affect them? Are they gonna wanna watch this and be engaged with it the same way that I am with films that were done 30, 40, 50, 60 years before me? So I've just put everything into it, and it's joyous doing it. You know, I can honestly say there's not a day that I didn't try. You know, you go and do it the very best you can. So that's my answer.
Good answer. Somebody I have to acknowledge sitting in the audience is my writing partner, Eric Jenderson. I'm seeing back there.
Where's Jenderson? Hey, Eric.
Have a stand up, Eric.
Yeah, we got to say there's Eddie Hamilton.
Eddie Hamilton, our editor, sitting right next to it.
Yeah. And our incredible cast. Where are they?
Incredible cast. Where are you guys?
Are they here?
Anybody? Oh, they're probably out partying.
They're out partying. They're out doing interviews.
Eric and I have been friends for, we've actually lost track of how long we've been friends for. My family and I were trying to figure that out today. And he is, any project that I'm working on, I call him, he calls me. We talk to each other for hours a day. We're essentially each other's psychologists. And Eric, early on in this process, and missions are very hard to write. They're very challenging, and a mission has a mind of its own, and it doesn't tell you where it wants to go. Eric was listening to, we were struggling to write the mission brief, Good Evening, Mr. Hunt, which is always one of the hardest things in the movie to do, because it's pure exposition that you're trying to make emotionally compelling. And Eric noted 3 very important things, 3 important words, actually 4 important words. One was choose, one was accept, and then there was good luck. And that he pointed out to me that this entire story, this entire franchise, is about choice and acceptance. I would go so far as to say the entire process of making films is about choice and acceptance. And that became incorporated into the DNA of the story, as did this concept of good luck, and the motif of good luck, which runs through the movie. Found it very interesting that going back to Bruce Keller's TV show, the idea of this secret government agency that would end every message with, should you choose to accept, empowering that person to do it. It wasn't an order. It was essentially, it was an offer. It was, if anything, it's a prayer. And then offering good luck felt like something completely human. The reason I'm getting emotional is because of how many times those concepts hit us in the face while we were making this movie during a global pandemic and 2 industry strikes, when it felt like the art form that we were making it for was facing extinction. And is here because of the efforts of this man. I was a fly on the wall for all of that, and I watched it happen firsthand.
It doesn't happen without you, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you. They take your call a lot sooner than they take my call. I'm happy to be on speaker. And so that imbued this with a kind of humanity starting in Dead Reckoning, the notion of the mission briefs and what they became, culminating in the mission brief you'll see in this movie, where it was the first time where the mission brief itself became something more emotional than informational. And that, I have to say, started with a phone call in the middle of the night from Eric Jennerson. Thank you, Eric, for that.
Thank you, Eric.
Well, since I'm on the subject, what is the future of the franchise? Is there going to be a future to the franchise? I mean, everybody want to know. Especially when you're going to see the movie tonight.
Just let us show the movie tonight. This is like 30 years culmination of this, and I think that it's, this is, I'd rather just people see it and enjoy, and we've had an amazing time doing it, and it's been a lot of fun, and I just want you all to enjoy it. Enjoy this and know everything is, the culmination has come to this moment right now, and it's been a lot of fun.
Tom, I'm sorry, I'm going to say nice things about you. Chris, we know from all his movies that Tom is a very, of course, talented actor, but a diverse actor, that he can do a lot of things, that he did a lot of things, whatever the movies are, whatever the directors were. But you're the first one in the Mission Impossible and in the Richards to use all these palettes. It's giving kind of every aspect of your talent you're giving to Chris. How did you manage to get everything from Tom in your movies? I mean, not just the action hero, not just the moving guy, not just but everything. I mean, you'll see tonight again mostly the first part of the film. You'll see that.
How did you do that?
Just get out of his way. It's just very simple. It's something you don't see, and I don't get an opportunity to talk about a lot, is the generosity of this actor. And I've worked on other movies. I've worked with other leading men. The structure of a Hollywood movie is that it's designed entirely around, it's all built around the protagonist, and everything else tends to fill the space that's left over. This is someone who spends most of his day on set with the camera pointed at the people around him. His skill, his ability, his incredible control of his instrument, which I will go to my grave saying, no matter how many awards he wins, he's very underrated as an actor. Much of what you're seeing, if you go back and watch Fallout, and you watch the scene between Tom and Julia at the end of the movie, where we're shooting in New Zealand, we were shooting in the winter, so it was low winter sun, and we were shooting in a valley, which meant the sun had to come from behind one mountain, and you had to finish shooting before it went behind the other mountain, which meant, because I don't think about these things when I pick a good-looking location, you had 5 hours of available light every day. And it was Michelle Monaghan, one of only a few days she had on set. It was a scene with her and Wes Bentley and Tom. And it's a very emotional scene for Ethan. And it's not just those two, but it's also the team. And Tom Cruise said, do everybody else. And I said, this is the most important moment for you. He goes, look at me, my back is to a tent. We can shoot this in London. Do everybody else. And of course, we shot everyone else as the sun was creeping across the sky. And at the same time, we don't want to leave ourselves work to do back in London. When you go back and watch that film, I want you to watch it and know that Tom Cruise's entire performance was delivered in the last 8 minutes of available sunlight. I'll get in trouble for saying this. Tom Cruise's performance with Val Kilmer in Top Gun Maverick is the most emotional through line of that entire scene, one take. You're talking about an actor of incredible technical ability, but also incredible generosity. Making these movies is both extremely emotional and extremely technical. You have to hit very specific marks, how you blink, how you move, it's so obsessively precise because the communication is so global and so nonverbal. It's so highly attuned, and everybody is watching Tom, and they're learning from Tom how to make these movies and how to deliver that kind of performance. That's all emanating from him to all the people around him. It's the generosity of Tom as to why all of that is working. And it's again something I feel he does not nearly get enough credit for. Another thing I would say, when you watch Tom tonight, there's a moment where he's in an airplane, he's in a biplane, completely alone. He's at the controls, and his biplane suffers some damage. Spoiler, there's tension in this scene. And there's a moment where the camera's in profile, and Tom Cruise looks over at the damaged strut of his biplane, and the camera throws focus. And it's this beautiful backlit shot, there's sun, and you see this vibrating strut. And Tom turns back, and the camera racks focus to Tom. I want you to remember, there's no crew with Tom in an airplane at 10,000 feet above Africa. Tom is lighting the shot by how he's positioning the plane in its relationship to the sun, and he's operating focus just off camera. He is the crew in every single shot you're seeing in which he's alone in the plane. And nobody tells you this stuff. He's never on the behind the scenes. Tom's like, stop doing that. I'm like, no, I'm going to tell everybody.
But there's a lot of briefing beforehand. Where do you want the light, McHugh? How do you want, what are the clouds like? Are you happy with the background?
Yes, of course. And then, of course, when I'm saying you're happy with the background is clouds. It's not like we can scout that location and go, remember the cloud we saw yesterday? Go to that cloud. Tom is up there, and I'm talking to Tom on a radio where he really can barely hear me, and he's flying in an open cockpit. The communication that's another thing to remember when you see Tom on the wing of the plane. The only way to communicate with Tom on the wing of the plane is through hand signals. He has no radio, which means I have to fly up next to Tom in my helicopter. And Tom can't see me unless I open the door and step out onto the skid, with my first AD, Mary Boulding, reminding me to leave my seatbelt on. And I'm doing hand signals to Tom, and now the thing to remember about this environment, this is all fun stuff you're getting that most audiences don't. When you leave the cockpit of the plane, it's like stepping onto the surface of another planet. The wind is hitting you in excess of 140 miles an hour coming off of the propeller. The molecules of the air are so dispersed, you're breathing, but only physically. You're not actually getting oxygen. And Mary Boulding is sitting next to me, and she's got a stopwatch. And when Tom climbs out of the cockpit, I'll say, start the clock. And every minute, Mary Boulding says, 1 minute on the wing. And Tom is going through his performance, 2 minutes on the wing. Tom has 12 minutes. We know this from experimentation, that at about 12 minutes, the fatigue of being blasted by this wind is breaking his entire body down to the point where it's literally like 2 hours in the gym. And Tom, being the perfectionist that he is, would get to about 12 minutes. And I would lean out the door of the helicopter and say, and Tom would go, 13 minutes on the way. If you've ever seen Rocky, there was a moment, more than one moment, where Tom had pushed himself to the point that he was so physically exhausted, he couldn't get back up off the wing. He was laying on the wing of the plane. His arms are hanging over the front of the wing. We could not tell if he was conscious or not, and we also knew that unless Tom did this, it was expressly agreed he was not in trouble and he could not cut. You can't do this when you're unconscious. So we're waiting to see if there's any indication if Tom is okay. This means I'm resting, and we're waiting to see this sign. And Tom is laying on the wing of the plane, and John remained in the plane, so that the planes could have their full maneuverability. We didn't leave with a full tank of fuel. We left with a very light load of fuel, so that the airplane could do the aerobatics it did. At which point John Romaine says, I have 3 minutes of fuel. 22 minutes on the wing. This was a typical day shooting in Africa, and watching Tom at the point of physical exhaustion get himself, because by the way, the plane can't land if Tom's on the wing. I should have mentioned that. So when John Romaine is saying 3 minutes, he's got 3 minutes to get up, but he's been on that wing for 20 minutes. And we watched Tom as he pulled himself up and stuck his head in the cockpit so that he could replenish the oxygen in his body and then climb up into the cockpit and bring the plane safely down to land. No one on earth can do that but Tom Cruise.
Guys, we're gonna have to wrap, but I want to conclude on one thing, and I think the discussion, listening to you, we understand why you make such great movies. You love movies, you love making movies. Did you
We
realize?
love an audience.
Yeah, we
That
love
is
an
what we
audience
love.
to want to love it.
And you love cinema.
I love cinema and I love watching movies with audiences, and I just also have to say with McHugh, the hand signals that we created, you are a true adventurer, my friend, and that's why do I love you? You are that way. You have that spirit. Thank you. And it's been an honor and a privilege to know you and to work with you.
Honor is
Merci beaucoup, messieurs. Merci.
Merci Didier Allouch,
Merci beaucoup.
Tom Cruise, Christopher McQuarrie.
Big shelf.